Hey guys, how's it going? Marvin D'Souza here again. So in this video, we're going to look at the WAF or Web Application Firewall and how you can use it within the Azure security network to enable your or protect your resources. We have this available also for your SaaS applications within Azure Security Center. For this example, I'm just going to cover your websites hosted within the Azure security within the Azure cloud space. So let's go. So usually one of the key elements or reasons we want to have a web application firewall is to protect our resources, but there are other reasons as well, right? I mean, one is to do SSL decryption so you don't have to put that burden on your endpoint or your web servers to ensure that good coding standards have been followed, things like that. However, configuring these things and getting them to work is always a challenge, right? Because there are multiple ways we can install these. Microsoft supports multiple ways. Or you can have a regional one, you can have one for CDN, you can have a front door one that covers your entire globe. But the main goal really is for us to push that easy button and say, okay, I want to implement a WAF, but I don't want to spend hours configuring it. We have custom rules where you can do things like geo fencing, where you can say, I only want to allow certain countries to access this firewall. I can block IPs. I can do some kind of perimeter filtering and obviously HTTP size monitoring or restriction. What we really what I want to highlight is the built-in the open web application security project rules that we have built in. We have bot management rules, so you can allow certain bots like good bots and prevent bad bots from getting in, and all that is automatically updated and enabled for you if you choose to use it on your web application firewall policy. Like I was mentioning earlier, you have the good bots and the bad bots, and this is how we can actually make this really easy for you to implement. So hold on one second. Let's get to the demo in just a second. So before I jump into the demo, I just wanted to set the groundwork of what I'm going to be doing. So I'm going to be using an Azure Web Application Firewall that requires very little configuration, if almost nothing really from the security perspective. Yes, you'll have to configure some networking aspects. But really what I'm going to do is, if you're not familiar with the OWASP or OWASP, it's a open web application security project, and it's basically a open source project that allows you to or flags bad vulnerabilities that exist on current websites, exploits that can be taken advantage of by bad actors, things like that. So they have built-in rules, etc., that Microsoft WAF takes advantage of. But another cool thing is they have this thing called the Juice Shop, and it was developed by a student out of MIT. But what's cool about this is it's a online website, and it's great for developers and for security professionals who want to look at existing website code and see all the vulnerabilities that exist. Things from cross-site scripting to SQL injection, uh, open FTP links, there are also documents that are not protected, things like that on this site. So it's really good for you to see if your existing security can, you know, fight that. So to demo this, I have two containers. The I have a Juice Shop Demo 3. I'm going to start it now. And then I have a Juice Shop Just Demo. So Juice Shop Demo has a public IP address. Because it has a public IP address, it is susceptible to attacks. I'm going to use a Kali Linux box that has built-in attack applications, etc. But you can download a lot of these applications onto your Windows machines and things like that as well. But I have one that's going to be behind an application gateway. So let me show you that real quick. So application gateways are like load balancers, right? Think of it as the traffic hits this IP address, and then this device is capable then of pushing the data or proxying the data back to a server that's listening in the backend. you notice I just turned on the server, so it's going to take a while. It's checking the health of the server. So if you go up down here and look at the backend health, it'll show you that your server is unhealthy. And so after all the servers turn on, we'll see that it'll change from unhealthy to healthy. But basically, I have my internal server configured for port 3000. So whenever you use the juice shop, it's on port 3000. And then other cool things with when you're configuring this is one is you create a backend pool. A backend pool is a pool of IP addresses that or targets that your load balancer will forward the traffic to. Routing rules are rules that are associate listeners, because this is what the front end will hit, and then send it to the back end. So let's go look at a listener, right? So real quick. So these are my listeners, right? And what I have is I'm saying for the backend port is 3000, send the data for this HTTP setting, send it to the backend. And then for my listener, let's look at this. So what I'm saying is when the traffic comes in on my front end public IP address, because I can have multiple IP addresses, forward it to port 3000. So as you have more and more applications behind your firewall, behind your application gateway, you can create multiple listeners, and those listeners can be, if the URL is video, send it to the video servers, or like my website slash videos or my website slash music, and send it to the right servers. So you save a lot of processing and things like that. You could also have things like SSL settings, so you can also have you can install your scripts here, so it can do decryption. So you don't have to overload your servers with all the things that we usually do, like all the certificates and things like that. The other benefit of having an application gateway is with Azure is we can actually implement a web application firewall. So there are two ways you can do this, and it's back to healthy now. But there are two ways you can do this. You can have a web application firewall that's built into this, or what I did here was I created a web application, sorry, I'll go back home, a web application firewall policy. And what this means is I can apply this policy or associate it with number of application gateways. And you look here, associated application gateways, and I have it associated with the application gateway we were looking at earlier. And what this really is I have now some rules. So let's look at we talked about OWASP or OWASP, and so Microsoft Azure WAF has built-in OWASP rules. So you don't have to do any configuration, download, or anything. As these new rules are updated by the open source project, right? Think of MITRE or some other kind of, or NIST or anything like that. As these kinds of open source organizations develop new vulnerabilities and security attack protocols, things like that, we take all that information, ingest it, and then make it applicable. So you can choose only one of these rule sets at a time. We have an additional Microsoft Bot Manager, which is based on the Microsoft Intelligence Security Graph intelligence. So as we collect intelligence from them, from that system, we will pull that intelligence and make it available to you. So again, there's no configuration that needs to happen from your side. You just basically start using that. We also have custom rules here. Custom rules are really cool. You can create custom rules to block by IP address. So if you're getting hammered by an IP address and you see a certain IP address that's constantly hitting your website, you can block it. You can also do it by geolocation. So if you don't do business with a certain country and you're like, you know what, I never do business with this country, I don't need to even allow access to this country, so you can completely block it. Obviously, number and string based on the HTTP kind of site that you're hosting and the size of the HTTP headers, things like that. So you can really get very granular in your control and protect your organization. So let me start up the colleague box real quick. Just give me a second. I'll pull it started another screen, so I'm just going to pull it over. Give me a second. So let me log into this Kali box here. And there's Kali built into Azure VMs as well, so you can install it and use it directly on your Azure platform as well. So that's really nice as well. So let me open this. And so again, there are a lot of built-in tools that you can use directly within Kali. Some of these tools like Burp Suite or even Zap, I think, are available for other operating systems as well. So you really don't need a Kali box if you don't have one or don't want to build one. Other than that, they're really easy to build. It's not, it's not as hard as sometimes people make it sound. It's really simple and a lot of information out there for YouTube videos. I'm going to use OWASP Zap. So what this is a tool that uses things like AX Spider and traditional Spider, and you put in the URL of the site that you want to attack. And you can use anything from Google or whatever, right? And here, this Firefox headless or Firefox. So headless means it's just going to pretend like it's going to use the same kind of code of a Firefox, but it's really going to just collect all this data here. Firefox, if you just use the browser, it'll basically open up the website as well for you. So let's just do with Firefox. It runs a little slower, but you can actually see the site that's being opened as well. So let me go back into my Azure. Let's pull up the IP address of Juice Shop demo. So this is a public IP address. So this we'll go directly to it. So let me go back into there, put that in there, and then it's port 3000 like I mentioned earlier. So every Juice Shop demo has the same port. It is just the way it is. You can always change that code if you were so inclined. But as you can see, as soon as we hit the attack button, it starts going and it's looking for stuff. And you can see this is the attacker we're using, and you can see we're seeing a lot of cross-domain misconfigurations here, and we can see as you click on it, you'll see a lot of data. Sometimes I've stumbled across, they have these within Juice Shop demo, it's like a game almost, and you can see different kinds of files and stuff that are in there, and it'll show you like the different things you're looking at. If you look at FTP, it'll show you like all the different things. All these things should be protected, guarded by at least some sort of security, but nothing is in there. So if you were an attacker and this was a site, and let's say a banking site or something more important, and you can see here, see this document is confidential, do not distribute. I have full access to this document. So this is a site that's been not written correctly, not behind a web application firewall. So we basically have a problem here. So let me stop this attack because there's no point in continuing. We know that this is a bad site, right? So we look at all the alerts over time. The alerts have grown from like 10 to now 56. There's session ID and URL right. So we're getting a lot of data, right? This is a very insecure site. Again, this boils down to that whole thought process, right? Of it can't control what our web developers are doing backend, but we as security teams can control at least what we'll allow on the web from our organization. So that's where this really starts coming to play, where we can say, okay, we want to protect our organization, so we put all the websites behind the WAF. And so if someone has vulnerabilities directly into their code, it won't matter so much. So let's go back to Quick Start. I'm going to put in the code here again. I'm sorry, the IP address, but this is off my application gateway here. So now it's going to go through my application gateway to that site. So I'm going to hit, let me open up, did it open up Firefox? I think it did. And I'll just show you the site. It opened up the Juice Shop just like we saw earlier. That's the old one, right? That was the one going directly to my container without the benefit of a firewall. So it opened up perfect. So now let's attack it. Now this is the IP address of my WAF, port 3000. That was the listener was configured for, and I'm going to hit attack. And you'll see immediately, it won't even allow the connection because it knows that this is an attacker. The WAF senses it, and it'll just basically block it. So you can keep doing that, and it's not going to let through. So how do you monitor this? Another cool thing about working with this is all the data is automatically forwarded from my application gateway to Sentinel. So if I go to Sentinel here, and I click on Sentinel, and I click on Workbooks, and then my workbooks, and I have a Web Application Firewall workbook, and I click on View Save Firewall workbook. So as this loads, we'll see all the data that was collected for this. It's still query pending. in there. As I was getting that 403 error code. So all that information is really saved nicely to Sentinel. What's nice really about this is that we can actually look at the IP addresses that are giving us a problem, and then we can actually just block those IP addresses within the firewall. So again, these workbooks are completely customizable. They're all JSON code. So if you're a coder, you know how to do that. You can actually go and code a lot of this. You can have an auto refresh set, so every 5 minutes it'll auto refresh for you, so you don't have to keep hitting this refresh button here. But every time you hit the refresh button, if there's more data, it'll basically just come up and it'll tell you like, okay, this is the guy that's giving us the most grief, how the most attacks that are coming in, what browsers they're using, things like that, and what are they attacking, where are they going, and what are they trying to do, the URLs they're requesting. So thanks for watching. Hope you guys found this helpful, and have a good one.